Colleen, Mark, thanks for taking the time today. It's been a pleasure to work with you both. Very exciting. Love your school. Been there many times, and really looking forward to working with you on this search. We'll love to just first begin by having you both just tell me a bit about your background, how you came to Hillbrook, and introduce yourselves, and then we'll explore more about the school and the role. Colleen, you want to maybe start us off?
Sure. I'm Colleen Schilly. I'm the associate head of school. This is my 8th year at Hillbrook. When I started at Hillbrook, I started as the head of lower school and did that work for a number of years before transitioning to associate head of school, where I've supported the school in a wide range of different projects and initiatives and at times different roles. I originally was drawn to Hillbrook because as I was looking at different mission and vision on websites and other materials that schools share, it did really stand out to me that Hillbrook mentions laughter in its vision statement. And that's unusual. And so when I visited, it was something I was interested to learn more about. And it's very palpable on Hillbrook's campus, certainly amongst children. And there's a tremendous amount of joy in the student experience. It's also really a palpable feeling amongst colleagues. There's not a day that goes by that I don't genuinely deeply laugh and experience a lot of joy in my work. And that's something I definitely don't take for granted. And it's a way that I've seen Hillbrook's mission come to life, not just for the children that we serve, but for families and for employees as well.
That's great. Laughter is a really important element of any school. I love it. Mark, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Mark Silver. I'm the head of school, and I've been here for 14 years. And just like the quick background, prior to Hillbrook, I was at a big JK-12 in San Diego, Francis Parker School, where I was the head of the middle school. And prior to that, I'd spent a number of years in the Bay Area and had been at Crystal Springs Upland School in particular, where I'd done started as a history teacher and then became a dean of students and so on and so forth. So in terms of the Hillbrook piece of this, like I was very drawn to Hillbrook, in large part actually due to its history. It's a really historian by training, and the history and culture of the school. It was founded back in the mid-1930s. And from the beginning, it was a school that believed that if you given the right environment, that any child could thrive. And they used to talk about, as the twig is bent, the tree will grow. And so there are these little houses at the center of campus, the Village of Friendly Relations, which were built in the late 1930s by our students. And the head of school at that time, the founding head, a woman named Mary Oram, has this beautifully written letter that describes how she had them coming up with the idea to build these houses and why. And essentially it was like right before World War II. And she believed that by having children build this village and actually it was an operating village with a bank and a general store and a tea shop, that with this working village, that it would help bring about world peace. And so I always loved kind of the audacity of that vision. And then over my last 14 years, I've just continued to be drawn by our vision itself, which is to inspire students to achieve their dreams and reach beyond themselves to make a difference in the world. And I think particularly that second part is something that is somewhat unique to us, but also particularly unique to us in the sense that we think a lot about that. We think a lot about how do we help children reach beyond themselves and adults reach beyond themselves to make a difference in the world. And it's something that really animates the program and the experiences that we have on campus.
And I can attest to having been right at the Village of Friendly Relations. I saw the little buildings, and I think I saw a sign where there was like a little fruit market or something that was there, or some sort of, it was amazing and right in the heart of campus. I love it. So Colleen, for somebody who hasn't been to Hillbrook, let's talk first about the lower middle school campus, which has been the campus for so long. And Mark, we'll get to the exciting expansion in a second. But this is a position that is centered first and foremost around student support, student success. If somebody walked into some classrooms, saw students walking through the rolling hills and by the stream, kind of what would be what would the culture be like? What would they be expecting to see in the classroom? And just a little window or snippets into the student experience at Hillbrook.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that would probably stand out to someone who's walking around campus, and specifically if they're popping into classrooms, is how familiar and comfortable students are with that experience. That adults or peers or kids of other ages coming in and out of the learning space is a very familiar experience to them. We're an incredibly collaborative school environment. because we know that no one person is great at everything. And when adults in particular leverage their strengths, we're better equipped to meet the needs of each student, and that we can't all do everything for every kid. We need to work together. And as such, there's oftentimes a lot of adults in different spaces supporting students, coming to check in with students, observing for their own personal, professional growth. And so I think, if you walked into one of our classrooms, students would certainly turn and look. They might continue the work that they're doing. Someone might come over and say, hey, this is what we're up to. If you want to come join us, come join us. It's a very fluid environment in that way. I think one of the other things that really stands out, as you think about, like, if you parked yourself, as you were talking about, sitting in the Village of Friendly Relations, we have a bunch of picnic tables out there. If you parked yourself out there for 20 minutes, you would see, as kids move across campus, that there is this just right balance of autonomy and choice, with students doing the thing that they need to do and getting where they need to go, and that you'll see the kids who are running from their classroom to, say, their music class because that's what their body needs right now. You'll see kids who are chatting with a friend between their classroom and their music class because connecting socially between classes is important to them. And then you'll see the kids who are collecting rocks and acorns and stuffing them in their pockets because that's the thing that they need right now. And I think that we provide that to students as an experience on campus is a real gift to children. And it very much models how we as adults transition in life, right? We are fortunate with an outdoor campus that we don't have to make children walk in lines and hallways. And so they get to have the experience of transitioning between learning moments, and learning what it is that they need to show up ready to learn in their next classroom space. And that's all really a core piece of what it means to be a kid at Hillbrook.
I can attest to having seen all of that for sure. And you mentioned the collaborative piece and you mentioned the modeling. I just want to point out what we're doing here is authentic in terms of the two of you share an office together, and that struck me as like really modeling and this notion of adult collaboration too, which I saw throughout the campus. The adults are really working in tandem or pairs, and it's just clearly part of the ethos at Hillbrook. Mark, behind you is Vision 2030, and I don't know what's all the things on the board, but I can't imagine the high school is not a part of that in some way. An exciting new project that Hillbrook has undertaken. Your vision has brought that to life. I know it's the talk of the Bay Area. Tell us a bit about what's going on and what's headed up for Hillbrook next.
Yeah, thanks. It's an incredibly exciting moment for the school. We have been over the last, so for years, people would ask the question, like, what would it look like if Hillbrook had a high school, which I know happens at a lot of JK8s, right? You get that question. So about 5 years ago, we finally said, we really need to think about that. We need to have a very deliberate process to kind of understand what's involved with that and all the different pieces to that. And so we started that, and the pandemic hit. And even through that, we really came to, first of all, we came to understand what was involved with adding a high school, but we also came to believe, and we still very much do as we now prepare to launch this next fall with our first class, that students deserve the type of education that we will provide in the high school. And it's an education that builds on, the very strong foundation they get in the JK8. A couple of things that are probably worth noting. One is it's a second campus, as that you've alluded to, in downtown San Jose. And it was a very intentional decision to have an urban campus, and we're super excited to have a spot right in the middle of San Jose and to be really in the South Bay, one of the only schools. There's a Notre Dame Catholic girls' school, great school, which is also in downtown San Jose. There's no other schools that are truly urban. So we're very excited about that as both the differentiator, but also as something that is very core to the type of program we provide. We've increasingly, as we've been describing, so again, people haven't necessarily seen our current campus, 14 acres, as you've been hearing Colleen talk about, right? It's bucolic, trees, lots of grass, lots of space. And then you go downtown and it's 2 buildings. And so initially some of our families were like, well, I don't, we're going from a 14-acre campus to 2 buildings, by the way, beautiful historical buildings, but 2 buildings in downtown San Jose. And we're like, yes, because the city is the classroom. This is the largest campus you'll ever have. And already, as we're developing the program, we're partnering with San Jose State University to use their library. We're making connections with local theaters to have our plays done in other spaces. And of course, then from a curriculum standpoint, we're making all types of connections with people downtown to have students always be out in the community as part of their learning experience. And so it's a super exciting moment for the school. It has been the most challenging and energizing thing I've done in years as a school leader. And I think it's, and one last thing I would just say is, because we keep telling this to parents, while we are adding grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, we are becoming a JK-12. And we know, I've worked at JK-12, I know that the benefits of adding 9, 10, 11, and 12 will not just be felt by our high school students, but will be felt all the way back down into the JK-8. And so we spent a lot of time talking about kind of this idea of 3 divisions, 2 campuses, 1 school. And so we know that that's a really core piece of what we're designing as we bring in that first founding class next fall.
Very exciting. Vision 2030. I'm ready to buy into that, and sign me up. And so, Colleen, as we think about this role and where, what you've talked about, what Mark's talked about, where the school is, what's happening as expansion is happening, but other things that are going on, just how has all that informed your strategy and thought around learning support, student support? And talk to folks who might be wanting to hear more about what you're looking for, where this role will have the greatest impact, and what ultimately you're hoping comes out of this process.
Absolutely. So as we've been looking at launching the incoming 9th grade class next year, we recognize that we need to expand our current learning support offerings and structures into the high school in a thoughtful and measured way. And so starting in the towards the tail end of 22 last year, so November, December, and into the new year this year, we launched what we called our Learning Support Expansion Project, where we invited in an external consultant with deep expertise in learning support and a lot of expertise in the independent school world to do essentially an overview of our current offerings, to interview and sit with a lot of different constituents, from current learning support staff to faculty to parents to school leaders, to get to spend some time in classrooms with students and to give us a set of observed strengths and recommendations as we look to expand our program. And one of the key outcomes of this was this position. And so this director of student support position, we've titled and designed as someone who will be leading a team that includes both our learning support staff team and our counseling staff team. We see a real opportunity that isn't super common in independent schools to bring together these 2 groups of people whose work often deeply overlaps. But it is not always seen as a single cohesive department. And we think there's a lot of really interesting, compelling opportunity for the person who leads this department to clarify and sort of narrate the edges of what learning support and counseling support at Hillbrook does and doesn't do, and to design systems to make sure that the mission and vision of Hillbrook is relevant and accessible to all students who attend here. And so the type of person that we're really excited to interview for this is someone who's really invigorated by that structure, someone who's invigorated by all of the things we've shared about Hillbrook and who and how Hillbrook is, but also someone who's really excited about sort of designing into some of the ambiguous space that exists right now with the expansion into the high school and the support systems we want to build out further here. This is I think a really exciting leadership opportunity, and we've designed it as such that a lot of different types of leaders could see themselves as a really good fit for this. Leaders who have some expertise in learning support, leaders who have expertise in counseling, or leaders who have expertise in division heading. I think there are a lot of opportunities where people might see, I could do this, and it's a really invigorating opportunity for me, and we're excited to talk with you if that seems like you.
Excellent. Normally, sometimes I ask at the end of these conversations one thing about each of you that might be a little bit, unique, or about you, the person. I'm gonna switch it up a little bit and because this role is so focused on the Hillbrook student and the successful outcome, just give me a very brief story, if you could, each of you, about just one student that Hillbrook has just been such a great match for, or where the school made such a difference. I think both of you are not just leaders but also customers, so you can certainly say, hey, I'm here too with my kids. But maybe just one really short story of somebody you saw, a student that Hillbrook just maybe changed their perspective, or kind of had a really profound impact on that young learner. So one of you wants to grab it, another one can follow. Be great.
Do you know who you're
Got
doing?
one?
Great, you go, yeah.
So
I mean,
actually, I've got one. It's funny, and I immediately thought on somebody who's actually, it's been a while. So she's probably like 24, 25 at this point. I'm trying to remember, maybe 23. But so she was here. She was the youngest of three. She was here from kindergarten, and I'll never forget in fourth. So when I arrived, she was a fourth grader, maybe third or fourth grader, and she was really struggling. She was having a really hard time regulating herself. She was a great kid, but just was really struggling to be in the classroom. And we stuck with her, and I'll never forget, the dad one day said to me, the two older kids who actually I'd known one of them briefly, but I hadn't really known them. He's like, the reason we're here is because of this youngest child, because we knew that Hillbrook would be able to provide her the foundation that she needed. And we're like, yep, we think we can do it. And it was hard. We're like, yes, we think we can do this. And then I remember by the time she was in 8th grade, she was the co-leader of the student council. So like every week she was up there at our all school meeting for flag, and she was running it. She'd become this phenomenal singer. And I'll never forget, she did like she wrote a song and then performed it for the whole school. It always has stuck with me. She was one of these kids, right? And we've all had them, where you knew she had so much potential.
Mhm.
And yet, growing up is hard, and like not every kid shows up in a way that makes it easy for them to navigate through a school. By the way, she then went off to, because we didn't have a high school, she went off to Sacred Heart Prep, highly academic school, went and did incredibly well there, went off to college. And the parents always said to me, like, they credited Hillbrook and these are amazing teachers with the ability to kind of nurture and support her through those really hard years, which then, of course, we all got to enjoy the benefit at the other end of that when she was thriving as an 8th grader. But I think we are the school that believes in children, and we can see that possibility for children. So
Outstanding. Colleen?
Yeah, I'm sort of seeing the narrative thread here, right? Mark, you were talking about the founders and the village of friendly relation, and the women who founded the school's deep belief that children are capable, and they're capable of like real things. And I think we at Hillbrook, in general across the board, but specifically when we're thinking about kids who might need some additional support, believe that children do well if they can, and they want to do well. And if there's something that's happening where they aren't doing well, they're trying to communicate a skill gap to us. And we as the adults need to understand that more and figure out what learning needs to be put in place so that they can succeed and thrive. And in my mind, I have a student who started here in kindergarten and struggled to participate in the group plan in class, struggled with some self-regulation. We worked really closely with the family. The family were our incredible partners, and implemented the recommendations of the school. This student now is in 4th or 5th grade, and is thriving. And his dad approached me in an event we just had as a school last weekend and said, Hillbrook changed our family's life. And they have said that to me a handful of times, but I think what he's conveying in that moment is, we came to you at a time that was difficult with our kid. You noticed it and acted on it and talked with us, and were really transparent and caring in that process. And you stuck with us, and you stuck with our kid in a way that made an enormous difference. And I think those are the types of stories that we're excited to see this new director of student support come in and be really inspired by, and really lead in making increasingly a part of Hillbrook as it is now, but also the Hillbrook into the high school.
Very inspiring indeed. I'm sure on that Vision 2030 board, there is this, continue to have a profound impact on students and families. I know Hillbrook has been doing that, and hopefully this new director will come in and help lead some of that charge into the next decade or so. And as the school does grow into a JK-12. Very exciting times at Hillbrook. Thank you both for your time, and really appreciate this opportunity to work with you. And thanks again for talking today.
Thanks so much, Gabe.
Yeah.